Nosferatu. First, I will save your soul. Then, I will destroy you.
Welcome to Screams and Streams, the podcast that looks at the best and worst horror movies as rated on Rotten Tomatoes from 1970 onwards. I'm your host, Mike Caron, and with me is my co-host,
Chad Campbell.
Before we get into today's film, we'd like to invite you to check us out on Instagram. Our handle is @ScreamStreamPod. And check out our website, screamsandstreams.com. Just a warning, in the podcast, we do jump around in the plot as we talk about the film. If you don't like spoilers, we recommend that you stop listening now, check out the film, and then rejoin us for our discussion. Today, we are looking at George A. Romero's 1977 film, Martin. It scored 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's get into it. Chad, could you please give us the plot summary?
Martin, who comes to live with his uncle and cousin in the dying town of Braddock, Pennsylvania, sedates women with a syringe full of narcotics, then slices their wrists with a razor blade so he can drink their blood. He has romantic, monochromatic visions of vampiric seductions and torchlit mobs, but it's impossible to tell how seriously he takes them. So that's one of them, but then there's this other one that's quite vague and brief. A young man who believes himself to be a vampire goes to live with his elderly and hostile cousin in a small Pennsylvania town where he tries to redeem his blood-craving urges. So that one kind of gives you, it doesn't quite spoil how he does the murders, but I kind of like the one that's a little more vague.
Yeah, the one that's a bit more vague, a bit more intriguing. More intriguing than the film itself.
Well, tell us how you really feel, Mike.
Yeah, so let's get into our first impressions, and I will take us out of the gate on this one. I liked the premise. I liked the idea of that question that runs throughout this whole film of, is it actually a vampire or is it a mental illness?
Right.
So I found that intriguing, and I think I was actually really engrossed in the film and sort of intrigued in what level this was going to be with the opening sequence on the train, where it gets quite intense quite quick.
Right away. Yeah.
And I was just like, holy crap, we're in for one hell of a movie. Mm-hmm. And then for the next 40 minutes, nothing happens. So first impressions, great idea, great concept, poorly executed.
Yes.
And far too long. And it's set in Braddock, you said?
Braddock, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, that is George A. Romero's like hometown. And I don't know if he did he shoot it because he loved the place and wanted to highlight it, or did he shoot it because the place is a shithole and that hit the tone of the film? But because it was just such a crappy, sad area, like it just brought me down as well. So I couldn't ever get enjoyment out of the film. Like just the setting of it. Right. Took me right down the whole time.
Yeah.
It was almost Depression era, like the industrial Pittsburgh kind of level.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's really my first impressions. Like it's out the gate. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be one hell of a movie. And then it just like, I can't wait till this is over.
Yeah. I have to agree. I love the premise of the film. The story itself, I really like. When it started, I was right with you. I thought, holy crap, like we've got this crazy scene right out of the gate. Pretty disturbing. This guy that plays Martin does a really good job at just being super creepy.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a lot of things that fall short in this film that we're going to get into. It is quite depressing. There are long shots of just silence or people talking to Martin where there's no conversation or reciprocation of
there's no dialogue.
Emotion. Yeah. Turns out to be what could have been kind of exciting and interesting and fun seems just kind of dull and drawn out. Yeah, I would say I have to agree with you. My first impression, again, with a lot of Romero's films, I find it's got a cool concept, but just executed poorly. And the way he films, I'm not sure I buy into it, but we'll get into that a little later. So my first impression was I was excited because of the rating. I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a good one. And then was just kind of left disappointed.
Because Amusement Park, it scored 100%, but it also scored 100% almost in retrospect. Like that was a 2017 100%
right
on a film that released in the early 70s originally. Whereas I was like, is this a contemporary 90%? That's impressive. So yeah, just like you, I was excited. Like this is going to be like the redemption for Romero for us.
Right.
Let's get into the meat of our categories. We're going to head to our Tropes Hall of Shame. And Chad, why don't you start us off with some of yours?
Okay, I'm going to start with an easy one, just a kind of a subtle one, is tire squeals when any vehicle is making a turn. There's a scene where this lonely housewife gives Martin a ride home. She backs up, and she backs up excessively long. Like, she backs up all the way into the next back alley from her driveway. Yeah. And then when she turns to pull away, going quite slow, there's a tire squeal. They're just adding tire squeals in everything. And I was just confused. I was like, is she driving like a bat out of hell? Like, why do we need a tire squeal when she's just making a turn to go onto the main road? So that was a trope. You see it a lot in films when there's not supposed to be a tire squeal.
It makes me think of in Taiwan, a lot of the parkades have a certain coating on the ground, and it's kept very clean. And no matter how slow you go, the tires in those parkades do squeal.
There's a squeal, yeah. It's just,
I remember one time my friend's like, "Are we in a 1970s film?"
Did he say that?
Yeah. Because you're going 10 kilometers an hour in this parking lot.
And just squealing through. Yeah. That was my first one. And then I had another one that I've mentioned before in some of our other films, fog. Rolling in at night during what's supposed to be a scary scene. There's a scene where the grandfather's walking through this park and there's just an excessive amount of fog.
Right.
I don't think I've ever, like, there are times where it's foggy, but it's few and far between.
Right.
And I've never seen that amount of fog.
It could be a port town. We don't know, but...
Well, they didn't allude to that, or they didn't show that, if that's the case. But in any case, yeah, there was an excessive amount of fog when this grandfather was walking through the park.
Yeah. I've only been in fog at that level up in the mountains when the clouds are low.
Right. Yeah.
My first one, and it's kind of like anti-trope in a way, but because this movie is set up as a vampire film, but he touches and eats garlic. He like holds a crucifix. He's out in the daylight. So it avoids all of those vampire tropes except in his flashbacks.
Yeah.
Right. As the plot summary said, like, he has these romanticized flashbacks to what a vampire should be with. And I put the female in negligee. There's the exorcism at the level of the Exorcist style. Yeah. The candelabra, right? The mob with torches.
Black and white. So it looks like an old monster.
The old Paramount monster films. Yeah. So I just had that trope. Like his flashbacks were the vampire tropes. And then the other one I had was the drunk, lonely housewife.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Martin is a grocery delivery boy for his cousin's grocery store. And one of the women he delivers groceries to is clearly a sexual predator. No, but is her marriage is lacking. And so she's looking for a connection and she finds it in Martin. But yeah, she's an alcoholic. She's drinking to fill the time and regretting her dalliances. And
well, she complains about her husband all the time to him in the very first time where they meet. My husband is very meticulous about this, and he doesn't let me do this. And then she says, well, just get out if you're not happy. And
I did like that. And then he starts to get out of the car.
She's like, no, not you. It's pretty funny. Yeah. I had a couple others. The black guys dressed like pimps.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all the bad guys. They're in the parking lot accosting these ladies at the grocery store.
Those were hard to watch, those scenes.
Yeah, they're coming in and they're putting their groceries away, and these kids are saying something. We can't hear what they're saying.
I heard at one point, like, let me drive your car for you.
Yeah. So there's that. And then they're drug dealers, and they're always the negative, right? Yeah. So that was one I put in there. I also have the good guy in white, or the person that's supposed to be the savior in white. And that's grandfather shows up in a white suit, and he's
a white 3-piece suit.
Yes. And he's immediately calls him Nosferatu, as the clip we played at the beginning told. And he's dressed all in a white 3-piece suit, and he's supposed to be the savior of the family. So those were my next two that I put in there.
Okay, we're going to move on to our one-liners. Chad, what do you have for some of the lines from the film?
When they're in the train, so Martin attacks this woman out of the gate, and we see how he gets the blood from his victims. So he shoots him up just like the synopsis says he shoots him up full of narcotics and he says, I just want you to go to sleep. And this woman screams out, freak, rapist, asshole. I was like, okay. That's one of the first lines she says. She's also, what was in the syringe? And why do you want me to go to sleep? And she's saying all this stuff. But that one really, really stuck out. Freak, rapist, asshole.
I did almost write that one down. I think I was just so uncomfortable in that scene that I was like, I just like wanted to get through it.
You know, really, that scene was well done. It was creepy. It was spooky. It was, you didn't like seeing the struggle of that whole thing. And I was just, whoa, what? We're already into this. And it was very, very, very creepy. And then he proceeds to, once they're asleep, he takes a razor and he slits their wrists, and then he drinks the blood from the wrist, and then it all drips all over him. And then he sits there with them in bed for a while, like in their blood while they're dead. Yeah, I mean, that is super creepy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we do find out later when he's on the phone he phones into a radio show. The most implausible part of this is that some talk radio in the middle of the day is giving him airtime to like tell his story as a vampire.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how he wants to have sex with a woman who's awake, because up to that point, he's only had it with women who are asleep.
Right.
So then going back to that opening scene, they cut out the fact that he actually does rape this woman.
Yes.
Yeah. Like at first when you watch it, you think he's going to, but then he just slices the wrist, drinks the blood, and you're like, oh, it was just a murder.
Right.
And then retrospectively, it's like, oh no, like
no, he did everything. Yeah.
I have one line, and it's, I mean, there are some good ones, and actually, I'm gonna throw two.
Okay.
We opened it with the, I will save your soul, then I will destroy you.
Right.
And then it follows up with, let me show you your room. So I just like that a little bit. And then the other line I had is also in the opening, like when Martin gets to his cousin Kuda's house and he's talking. And like you said, there isn't a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of monologuing with Martin in the scene in a lot of this movie. And Kuda says to Martin, I am told you are imbecile.
Yes. I had that one too, actually. Yeah. I just thought that was hilarious. Yeah.
Do you speak? And then like, do you speak? And he still doesn't talk.
No, he just kind of stares at him and I was, okay. Yeah.
What else did you have for one-liners?
When so Martin has this little trick kind of guillotine that he brings around. I know why it's in there, but he doesn't, I don't know, there's not a lot of explanation as to why he carries it around and stuff. Like
I thought it was his cousin's like cigar cutter, but it wasn't. No,
it's a trick guillotine. It's to show like the magic, right? Yeah. And how it's fake. But anyways, he says things only seem to be magic, but there's no real magic ever. That was one of the things I thought was interesting. I mean, vampires have a lot of magical qualities to them, right? And he's professing himself as this vampire or identifying as a vampire, right? Yeah. But he doesn't believe in any of the magic stuff. So I just thought that was interesting. And I liked how it was all done on the table and he shows the trick and how it works and stuff. Right, so yeah. So I took that one and then I had one more, which was he goes into the lonely housewife's house. And the first line he says is, you want me here for sex, don't you?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And she just kind of looks at him. Well, yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I remember that because she opens the door and he's sort of in the doorway and she goes back into the kitchen and then he just walks into the house, closes the door and she looks at him like, what are you doing? And that's when he says like, you want me for sex, don't you? And it's like, at first I'm like, yeah, did Martin totally misread this? No, he didn't.
No, I don't know how you could misread it because she tries to feel him up while he's fixing the door. Yeah. And then he runs away. I even put in one of my notes, what is wrong with this guy? It is kind of creepy.
She's a confident, dominant woman. He's a young boy. Well, he's
allegedly
84. Yeah, 84, 85.
Right? Yeah. So anyways, like he said, he's never had sex with the non-sleeping ones. So yeah. So I guess he's a little freaked out about that. Anyways, that was my last one-liner was, hey, you want me here for sex, don't you? Well, yeah.
All right, we're going to move into our next category of what doesn't hold up. For me, my first one is the pace and tone of the film. I just found it too slow. It was more of a drama than a horror. Like I said, it was like from the opening scene to the next bit of sort of horrific tension or action, it was 45 minutes.
Right.
We're a horror podcast. I was looking at the best horror of the film of the year of 77. This one came up. So I really think I was expecting more of a horror film. And this isn't a horror film. It's a psychological thriller at best.
Right.
It's a mental health drama.
Yep.
For the most part, with a bit of blood. So I just think the tone and everything of this film just wasn't what I wanted for a horror film. It could have been, like, again, like we said, the premise of this was great and it really could have been done well as a horror film, but it just missed the mark for me.
Yeah. I think they could have been, well, I think he could have went crazy in Braddock there a little more, right? But I mean, it was like 50 minutes before it really starts to get moving. Other than that initial attack and the train station, it drags on. Just like you said, the pace is just, it's just very slow.
Yeah.
So, I agree. My first one was again, and I mentioned this with the tropes, is the black guys are the drug dealers and the bad guys, always. Yeah. He does that in Dawn of the Dead as well, where he has that apartment building is the ghetto, and all those guys, the cops come in and one of the cops is quite racist, and he's shouting at them and shooting them, and it's all a black apartment building, and they're the ones that have spread the disease, they think, and so it's just very negative.
Yeah.
So I thought that didn't hold up.
And you might think, is Romero trying to make like social commentary with this?
Right.
But if he is, he's not doing it well enough. It does seem like a stereotype portrayal, not well done for parody or satire.
No, he just throws it in there. It's not addressed at all.
Right.
It's just in there. And these characters just appear. There's no reason for those guys in the parking lot.
No, there isn't.
There's no reason for that drug deal scene. It doesn't move Martin's story along any more than he's being chased at that one scene.
Right.
And then he stumbles upon this drug deal, which causes a cop shootout fight, which I'll get to later.
Yeah, I've got that down too. For
unbelievably bad. And so, there's just not well done.
Yeah. My next doesn't hold up is, at first I was like, oh, this is terrible. Martin is wearing like fake vampire teeth and he's painted his face white and he's wearing a cape.
Yeah. That's in the park.
Yeah. And at first I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. And so I started to write it down, but then I realized like he's playing to Kuda's superstitions. He's like, is this what you want me to be? Is this what you think I would be?
I started to write down too. I was like, oh man, did they really use those teeth? Like, oh geez. Yeah.
And I get what Martin's trying to do there by saying to Kuda, like, you say I'm Nosferatu, I'm a vampire. This is what you expect me to look like and act like. But it was so comically bad that, again, it took the power and the tone out of that scene for me.
Yeah.
My next doesn't hold up is the scene towards the end of the film where Kuda kills Martin.
Okay, yeah.
Basically what leads to this is Kuda says, I told you not to kill anybody in the neighborhood. And the housewife kills herself in the bathtub. And Kuda is claiming that it wasn't a suicide, but Martin made it look like a suicide like he has with other victims.
Right.
And so Kuda's like, now you must die because you've killed someone in the neighborhood. And he drives a stake into Martin. And the camera angle, the setup, like it's clearly going into his armpit area. but it's also almost at like belly button level.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's nowhere near the heart. His shirt is closed and he hammers it in and there's a bit of blood, but it's not that gory.
Right.
And then the next time we see Martin, his shirt is completely open and the stake is right through the center of his like solar plexus.
Yeah.
So where the heart, I guess, anatomically would be, but it's not where Kuda drove the stake. Like the stake was like a good 4 inches lower than that. So yeah, that just doesn't hold up.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. My other doesn't hold up was the blood. We made reference to this, but Romero's blood in all his films just seems worse than any other one. And I did some research, which I'm going to talk about it a little later, but I know a lot of times people had problems because fake blood is hard to make and it's hard to make look real. But they really struggle with this in a lot of those films. And when he cuts the first victim's arm, that's the first thing I noticed. I was just really taken aback and God, man, again, it looks like paint. It doesn't look real, and it really takes you out of it. Now, afterwards, when he's sitting there with her, it actually looks not bad.
Yeah, the dry blood effect is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the initial bleeding of all the victims just looks poor. Yeah. So, that's my big doesn't hold up.
Well, I wonder, his blood doesn't look good in a lot of his films, and in a lot of the 70s films, it doesn't either. But Romero did want this to be black and white, so is it like he couldn't have been bothered to make it look better? But
fair enough. But eventually they said, like the producers said, no, you need to make it in color. So I think you would adjust for that, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't excuse...
No.
Like Night of the Living Dead, obviously black and white, but it was... So the blood, you didn't care, but Dawn of the Dead, the blood in that is horrible as well.
Right,
It looks ridiculous. And I think every Romero film, really, the blood just does not look good.
Yeah, I can't think of Creepshow or Monkey Shines, right? His 80s films, if they got any better. We're now going to move into most gratuitous scene. Chad, what was your first most gratuitous scene?
My first one, I have a couple, but the first one was stabbing in the neck with the stick.
Oh, yeah.
So when he goes and he finds this woman that he's chosen as his next victim, he breaks in to her house, which I thought was done pretty well too. I actually liked him sneaking in. The times he attacks people is actually probably pretty good. I think they do really well in the film, but it's all the other garbage that's in there that I didn't particularly enjoy. But when he goes in there, he goes into her house and he opens the door and she's butt naked and this guy's trying to get with her. She's having an affair.
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh no, you got to take it easy." And she says, "I don't know him. He's not supposed to be here."
I did like that where he's like, "Who are you?" And then it's like, "Oh my God, that's her husband." It's like, "Nope."
No. And she's like, "I don't know who he is." And so he closes the door, he runs away, and you hear them arguing in the background. And I thought that was really funny. And he injects him with something, with the narcotic, and then he runs away. Then he finds him another time and he injects him again. So he gives him 2 doses of this narcotic, and then eventually the guy passes out and he drags him out to the woods and he breaks this stick off in the woods, and it's ever so slow, and you don't see him enter the neck, but you know where he's going, and he takes it and he pushes it, and then you just see this blood come out of his mouth. And I was just, whoa, that's pretty. And then the next scene is him diving in there and drinking the blood from the neck.
Right.
So I thought that scene was pretty badass. It was pretty crazy. The fight scene, the argument between him and her with call 911. I can't call 911. That's the cops. It's just a general emergency number. Nobody's gonna know. I can't call anybody. You're not supposed to be here. It's just it was funny, but also kind of freaky and creepy, because he was in the house and he's moving to different parts of the house and he's stalking this couple. It was good. And then he injects her and then just lets her sleep. That part I didn't get. Like, does he leave her or does he kill her eventually? Because we don't see him kill her. I think
he satisfied his bloodlust with Lewis, the man.
Right.
So I'm thinking that because he satisfied his bloodlust with the woman, I think he just drugs, sleeps with, and leaves.
Yeah, and he even says, because of him, I don't have to hurt you.
Right. Yeah. He's like, I just want you to go to sleep. I promise I won't hurt you.
And you will wake up and you will be fine.
Yeah.
But that is, when he's talking to the radio host, he says how careful he is and how, and that's not careful. You're leaving somebody alive that you've broken into the house, you've stabbed her lover, taken him out to the woods, ate him, and then you left her alive. I don't get that.
Because he saw his face. Because he does, when he says, like, I'm very careful, you see him wiping down the blood and like hiding all the evidence. Cleaning up
the candies. There's no sign of a struggle. There's no sign of...
I love the fact that, like, he broke a vase in the struggle with a man and then he throws that in the garbage and, like, takes the garbage out.
Yes. I mean, he does all the things. I don't know what forensic science was in 70s, but his fingerprints are all over that house. Yeah. I mean, any kind of a record that guy's picked up, no problem. But he also leaves her alive.
Yeah.
So, and we'll never see her again.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, that was my most gratuitous was, one of them was the stabbing in the neck with the stick.
I forgot about that one. For me, my most gratuitous was the opening rape scene.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like I can't convey. This is the reason why you should watch this. Sorry, that sounds terrible, but like it's very well done, and the tension and the struggle between the two of them.
It's very real.
It's
right?
very real.
It does feel, because it's clumsy.
Yeah.
It's awkward. They're falling all over the bed.
He doesn't have the strength to totally dominate, but because she's drugged, she can't fight him off. And so you see what's coming, and it goes on for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just the audio of the struggle too. There's no overpowering music. It's
right.
Yeah, it's for me, I found it the most gratuitous just because it did go on so long and it was so intense.
Yeah. And he does that with all his, with the murders, he always struggles. One of my notes was, I don't think this is a very effective way to kill somebody because they're awake and alive for a long time and he has to fight.
Well, he had to double dose Lewis, right?
Right, yeah.
I did listen to the director's commentary of the film, and they were just talking about how they cast the film and where they got most of these people from. And a lot of them, they worked at a restaurant. In the scene in the train where he walks through the group of women and there's the guy that tries to walk through as well. And they're like, hey, hands to yourself, stay away from us.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He owns a restaurant and a lot of the actors in this movie worked at his restaurant.
Oh, okay.
And so they were talking about the casting. And in that scene in the train car, because there is nudity, one of the people's like, oh, so did you just say to this young woman, like, yeah, we're going to get you on film or we're going to get you naked? And like, it was an uncomfortable question. And Romero's like, well, she read the script, so she knew what it was about and why the scene was the way it was. And so she was okay with it.
Right.
Right. But I can't remember who asked that question, but they made it seem lecherous. And Romero's like, no, like she knew what was happening and was like, it's not like we took this confused starlet and then threw her on screen and then said, and we're going to get you naked.
Right.
Yeah. So rewatching that scene with that director's commentary, like it made it more uncomfortable just because of the way that question was phrased.
Right.
Thankfully, Romero handled it in a way that's like, okay, it made me feel okay about that actress's role in that scene. But yeah, it was a tough scene.
I had one more gratuitous one, which was the cop shootout with the druggies. There's this one scene where they shoot one of the guys trying to buy drugs, one of the thugs, and he shoots him square in the head and the blood just squirts out like out
of a tap.
Yeah, it just shoots forward and it's a very quick scene, but when you watch it, you're just, okay, what is happening? and it's that same fake blood that I have a problem with. You know, I like the stabbing in the neck for one reason, because I thought it was well done. The cop shooting one, I just laughed at it.
I laughed at
thought
that
it
too.
was pretty silly.
I'm going to get into that scene during the back it up.
Oh, okay. All right.
But that hole in the head was great.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go to Stood the Test of Time, and I'm going to open this one up. And my first one, it's the first time in the movie when we see Martin have a flashback, and it's when he's in the hallway of the train and he's breaking into the woman's compartment.
Okay.
And just before he breaks in, it cuts to a flash of, I guess, what he imagined is going to happen. And at first I thought it was what happened. Like they just cut to black and white for the violence effect. But he opens the door and it's this, beautiful woman in a sexy negligee, and she turns and smiles coquettishly at him. And then it cuts to the reality of he hasn't broken into the compartment yet. But when he breaks in, the room is empty, and then he realizes she's in the bathroom. So he hides in the corner, and she comes out and she's wearing this like thick velvet robe. Yeah. She's got her hair up. She's wearing a thick cream mask, like the way a normal woman looks at bedtime.
Right. Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed the juxtaposition of like, he's imagining this like seductive woman, like, oh, you're here. Oh, no.
Yeah.
And then it's just this woman just like, blah.
Yeah, I'm just getting ready for bed. It's funny you mention that, because that's actually in my research. I'll just mention this now because we're on the topic. It's a goof if you watch the scene, she comes out in that full mask, and then during the attack, the mask is gone.
Right.
It's the quickest cleanup ever, other than Ghost. But so she comes out, and then, I mean, you'd think that during the struggle, the mask would rub off.
That's what I was wondering, yeah.
But it's so clean. It looks like there's nothing around the edges of the face or anything. Right. And so that's why it's considered a goof, is because it's just gone.
Right.
Stood the test of time for me, I put was just the story, basically.
Right.
I thought the story was interesting, and I think if someone were to remake it or do it in a different way and try to up the stakes a little bit, I think it would be a lot more interesting and fun. Mm-hmm. You can make this, if it's mental illness or if it is Nosferatu, you can make this into a really cool movie, I think. But this one just missed the mark with them going way too into detail with stuff. So yeah, I just thought it could have been done better, but the story itself is pretty good.
Yeah. Just speaking of the story could have been done better or redone better, I did keep flashing to Nicolas Cage's Vampire's Kiss quite a bit.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a vampire. So this story has been done again, but still not great.
Yeah. Do you have another stood the test of time?
I do, yeah. And I wrote this one down, and I think it became a test of time just in almost juxtaposition to others. And it's Christine Forrest as Kuda's daughter, Christina.
Okay.
I put like her one-sided conversation in the kitchen and her nervousness to put her finger in the finger trap.
Right.
Like they weren't great scenes, they weren't powerful, but I think she does, like for an unknown and someone who didn't have a great career in this film, was the best actor for me.
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree. She has some really, when she comes into the kitchen and talks to him and he just says nothing.
Yeah.
But she says you should, or actually he does say, well, that would be too hard for them, because she says you should be in a hospital. You should be in something else. Right. She does a really good job in that scene. Yeah. I like that.
I thought she did great there. And when he puts his finger into because he asked her to put the finger in the trap and she's like, oh no. And she does like that nervous giggle. Mm-hmm. Like it felt almost like she wasn't told about this. Like it felt very real.
Right.
And then when he slams it down and it doesn't cut his finger and she like, yeah, I was like, wow, that was actually really good. And so for me, she stood the test of the time in this film.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to go into our eerie to ear splitting category. Chad, what did you think of the use of music in this film?
It was few and far between. Like there's not a lot of music in this film, but I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. I don't think I really enjoyed it all that much. Yeah. I didn't like the score, the audio effects they used, the sound effects and stuff in certain scenes I didn't particularly like.
Right.
So it's hard for me because I was watching and I got to this category while I was watching it and I was just, let's just say it's not memorable.
Right. Yeah.
I would say it's easily forgettable. You just don't care. Mm-hmm. So that's where I stand on that. I think the audio in this film just wasn't exceptionally done. So that's where I am.
And I have to agree with you on the it's forgettable, because usually when I watch these movies, I write my categories at the top of my page so that I refresh, like, what do I need to hit? But then I pause and take notes organically as things come up.
Yep. Me too.
And I watched this entire film through, thought, oh, okay, that's great. I'll take a break. And then I think later that evening, I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down with the director's commentary. And so during the director's commentary, they talked about sound effects and the use of Foley. And it was kind of interesting because Romero and I think it was Michael Gornick, who was the cinematographer who also worked on Amusement Park, were talking about, like, they had no idea what the term Foley meant. Like they would just make a film and then they would make the sound effects and add the sound effects. And then they were watching something else where they mentioned Foley artists. And they're like, oh, that's what we've been doing in the back room all this time.
So I didn't even know.
So I quite like that, but I never still noticed the sound effects in this film that much.
Yeah.
And then later in the commentary, they talked about the score and the great use of the music. And it was at that point where I was like, oh my God, I didn't even notice that there was music.
No, right? It's not well done. I didn't think they used it great. Anyway, sorry, I'm jumping in, but I didn't think they used it well.
Well, I didn't want to watch it a third time because even when they mentioned the score, I was like, I don't remember there being music, period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like other than the marching band at the end.
Yeah. Which was weird.
Yeah. And there's a reason why that happened.
Okay.
Yeah. So for eerie to ear splitting, mine is, it's.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's ear splitting because it's non-existent as far as I know, and I wouldn't say it's eerie either because it's just middle of the road, forgettable.
Somebody should take this movie and do like a midnight screening with a live band and rescore it live.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah,
if it's a cult status film, there might be an audience for it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get into our back it up moments, and I'm going to start us off. And Chad, you already spoke to this a bit, and it is when he's in that woman's house with not a mistress. What is it when it's a man? Her secret it's when he breaks into the woman's house and she's with her secret lover.
What is it when it's a man? A mister?
But I did love, you said, like you said, like the fight between, like, call 911. I don't want to call the police. It's a general emergency number. But when she finally gets the phone and Martin like runs through the house to find an extension.
Yep.
And every time she dials, he like messes with the number pad and like keeps screwing up and saying, I can't get through. And
yeah. Are you on the phone? Is there another phone? And
it was like almost like a bad Benny Hill sketch.
It was,
but it was so well done, and there was tension because like that was a big dude.
Yeah.
And had he found Martin before he got that second injection it kicked in, he would have kicked the shit out of him.
He would have crushed him, yeah. Because Martin, for people that don't know, in this film, Martin's quite small. He claims to be 84 years old, but he looks like he's young 20s. He's very lean. There's not a lot of muscular tone tone there. Like he's just a normal looking kid, really.
And from the struggle at the opening of the film, like we know he's not powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that guy would have destroyed him.
Wrecked him. Yeah.
So there's that tension and that running through the house and the cat and mouse game I thought was really well done.
Yeah. And you know what? I didn't really have a back it up moment, but now as we've talked about that scene, I think I enjoyed that scene the most.
Yes.
Because it was the longest scene.
Yeah.
Of his, adventure, but it was also, it had like a whole lot of elements in there. And I just really enjoyed how they played that up and him screwing around with people. Then he locks Lewis out of the house and then he goes and gets the girl and he injects her. And then he tries to reassure her and is like, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Now I can kill him and not you, basically. And then he finally, Buddy falls asleep and then he gets him, but it's really drawn out. And he comes into the house, he opens the garage and she comes out and calls her husband's name. I can't remember what his name is.
I don't remember either.
Anyways, yeah, it's well done. I would say that's a back it up. Just that scene, that whole scene is good. Yeah.
And there's that great moment, at least for me, the great moment where she's going, I don't know if it's through a closet into another room, but there's a set of doors that are very close together.
Yes.
And she goes through the one
other.
and they block each other and like he's fighting to like keep both closed while she's trying to close the one to get the other open. And
yeah. And she's screaming and she falls in between and it's like, come on.
And you have that top down view of that shot, that moment. Like it was well done.
Yeah.
Does it save the movie? But it's well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's by far the highlight.
It is. Yeah. My other back it up is, and you brought up this scene as well, but the shootout when Martin has killed a couple of homeless people and he's being chased by the police. While he's running away, he runs into a garage, where there is a gang doing a drug deal. Yeah. And they're like, get out of here. And this one guy's like, he's just a kid. Don't worry about it. And then the cops bust in and it turns into that shootout between the gang and the cops. Yep. I made this my back it up just because it was so not sensational, like amazing, but like sensationalized almost. I don't know. But there's a scene where one of the gang members gets shot through the leg. Yeah. And it's low shot and you just see the knee explode. Yeah. That one was very well done with the squib and everything there. Yeah. And then after that, there's the gang member goes to drive the car to the garage. The cop shoots him through the windshield. You get that spurt of blood out of the forehead that Chad talked about. And then the car slams into the cop. Oh, into the other guy. Yeah. Yeah. Just like keeps accelerator pinned and hits the cop into the other car. And I was just like, oh my God. And then that horn. Yeah. Just the whole time while Martin's trying to escape in that area. Again, no music. Yeah. They just shot each other. All you hear is the firing of the guns, the yelling of the people, and the effects of the crashing of the car. The crashing of the car and the horn afterwards because everybody's dead. Yeah. So that was my back it up moment just because that scene with the car crash was just like, I did not expect that, didn't see it coming. And I was just like, holy shit, that was good. Yeah. So for me, it was a back it up. Again, in a movie that's an hour and 35 minutes long. Oh, Lord. I've got 3 scenes. Like there's the opening attack that was tense but well done. The 5 to 10 minute scene in the woman's house. And then this 40-second shootout with the cops. Right. So that takes us through most of our discussion of the film. So we're going to go to our bonus features. Chad, do you want to share some of the stuff you found? My little quick research thing here. This film, the original cut, ran nearly 2 hours and 45 minutes. Ugh. And as of 2021, this version has never been screened publicly and was considered lost until it was rediscovered through the efforts of Romero scholar Kevin Crease and the Living Dead Museum. So there is a 2 hour and 45 minute version of this film out there. I can't imagine. And I couldn't imagine watching this for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Because it's not going to be more action. It's going to be more of the development of Martin, maybe more flashbacks, going more into his mental illness or whatever it is. But yeah, 2 hours, 40, that's a long film. That is, yeah. And a long horror film. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a long film I just don't see what you could do with an extra hour on this to make us go, wow, that made it a much better film. I don't think so. And it's often said to be his favorite of all his films. I can see that. Have you seen his other films?
I have, yes. Well, I've seen some, not all, but I've seen, and yeah, I guess.
I think again, it comes down to the concept.
Yes, I think
Looking at the other concepts of his films where it's like a monkey goes crazy or zombies,
yeah.
or an amusement park where people get beat up. When you look at that, I could see this being his favorite just because it is a great concept and intellectually it's a great film.
Yeah.
For me, what I found interesting was like there was question about the budget being either $100,000 or $250,000.
Oh yeah.
And this film was made at a time when Romero was broke. He owed a lot of creditors and he was ready to basically declare bankruptcy and run.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then Richard Rubenstein, his producer, is like, well, let's just make another film, see what we can get and see what we can do, and we'll go from there. And so Martin was relatively successful enough to pay off and get out of debt for Romero.
Oh, okay.
They did make the film for $100,000, but Rubenstein's like, there's no way I can go to a studio and say we made a film for $100,000 because I'll never be able to get more than that in the future. So he padded the budget up to $250 because he's like, yeah, we spent $250,000 just so that if he went back for another film later, they'd be able to get a higher budget.
Okay.
Yeah. So the money story behind this is interesting as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Because after Amusement Park, I knew that Romero was he hadn't found his success yet, and he was in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
During the screening and interview at USC, director George Romero related that the MPAA objected to a shot of Martin slicing someone's arm open with a razor blade. The entire shot would have earned the film a notorious X rating, and so he had to trim it by several seconds. The length of the shot, not the subject matter, was objectionable.
Yeah, so I read that too. So they took 7 seconds out of a different part of the film. So when they resubmitted to the MPAA, they just looked at runtime, saw that it was 7 seconds shorter, so assumed
he had taken that shot out.
Yeah. And that wrist cut, as bad as the blood is, I don't know how they did it. Because like he runs the razor down that arm and then the blood does flow from that cut line.
Yeah.
And it doesn't I don't see a lot of padding. I don't see a lot like.
Would it have been a prosthetic arm?
Yeah.
Because he holds it up, right?
Right. And we just see forearm.
And
only.
you just see the forearm and the razor blade go to the forearm. So I think it was a blood packed prosthetic,
but it was still it still looked like a real arm. It looked
like a real arm. Yeah.
Blood did not look good, but the arm looked great.
Yeah, for sure.
The only other thing I found interesting was Martin as a character was supposed to originally be an older man. Like it was supposed to be played by an 84-year-old or someone portraying an 84-year-old.
Oh, okay.
But then when Romero saw John Amplas's performance and acting ability, he decided to actually then create the role or modify the role so that Amplas could play Martin as a young person who thinks that they're 84 years old.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I think, to be honest, the film is better with a younger protagonist. I think an 84-year-old stumbling through these murders and attacks wouldn't have been enjoyable to watch. Also, I mean, it would have been a very different storyline. Obviously, he wouldn't have been like, I'm trying to sleep with women and I can't. I don't know what you would have done with it, but
right.
Like, I wouldn't want to see like Kuda and another old man arguing about who is and isn't a vampire for an hour and a half.
No, I don't think it would have had the same punch to it.
Yeah.
Like, the movie didn't have a lot of punch, but at least with him thinking he was an 84-year-old vampire, there was something there. Right. So I love how the grandfather's just, willing to, I told you nobody in our neighborhood. And he just like drives a stake through his heart. It's whoa.
And then buries him in the garden.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was kind of laughable was the exorcism that they try to do. So he has a priest come to his house for dinner and he says, oh, you should meet Martin or whatever. He talks about him and says, do you believe in demons? And the priest kind of laughs it off. He says, oh, you should talk to this older priest who is really into that. And he actually has done the old exorcism. He says that movie, The Exorcist, did it wrong. And they make reference to that. And then they proceed in the very next scene to do this horrible exorcism between him, which is actually Romero's in-laws. That was his father-in-law, was the old priest that did the exorcism, and it's just bad, and there's no attention, and Martin just sits there and looks at them hiding behind a couch while they perform this exorcism. And
right.
Yeah, it's just weird.
I just love it's like Exorcist got it wrong, we're gonna get it right, and you're gonna watch the most boring exorcism scene in any film.
In The Exorcist, she's flipping around. She's puking green soup. It's ice cold. Like, there's just crazy stuff going on. Things are flying. The guy kills himself at the end. In this one, they just put 2 candles together to make a cross. And the most painful thing you see is the wax dripping onto the guy's fingers.
And it ends with Martin just walking away.
Yeah. And he's just like, okay, well, that's done. Yeah. I was going to mention that I did some research into the fake blood and why some of the fake blood did look so bad. And basically, when I started to look through some websites and stuff, I found out that there's no real answer to it other than that the people that really know how to make fake blood don't want to share their secret on how it is. So they don't share it to studio to studio to studio. They want to keep it a secret.
Right.
And also, they said that it's not easy to make it and not easy to make it look real.
Right.
So people just kind of do a bastardized version of whatever they've seen. I've tried to make fake blood, and it's very hard to make it look decent, no matter what, recipe you try to use. But they also said that a lot of times it comes down to the budget of laundry, because a lot of the fake blood that they use that looks bad or looks poor is made with stuff that can easily be washed out and the stains can be removed. Whereas if you get something that's more, looks more real, the stains set in and it's very hard. So they have to spend a lot of money to try to get it out. And so that's one of the things that I found about fake blood. And I find it very sad that you're just, well, my budget is only this and I can't pay enough to wash all these clothes, so I'm just gonna do a cheaper version of my blood and make it look not as good. So anyways, those were some interesting tidbits I found about the making of fake blood, and it's just hard to do. I know you can buy some stuff that looks pretty solid, but it is expensive.
Yeah.
And it does stain your skin. So it doesn't necessarily stain your clothes, the expensive stuff, but it does stain your skin. So you come home with like this pink hue on you.
Right.
That's that. As far as the reason why blood doesn't look real, it's hard to make, or they want to cheapen the budget for the laundry.
Yeah. We'll never know the Colonel 7 Herbs and Spices, and we'll never know the recipe for good fake blood.
That's right.
All right, we're going to head to our watchability scale. Chad, where would you place this?
Well, as much as I slammed the film and I thought it was kind of dull in parts and stuff, I still really like the story. That scene in the garage was interesting. There are some moments that I actually liked, although I thought Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb got it wrong. IMDb website gave it 7 out of 10. I'm going to give it 5.
I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree with you that on concept, it's a 5 or higher.
Right.
But
on execution,
I just can't. I know Romero is shooting on a raw budget.
Right.
He's doing what he can in the time. And that's another thing I was going to talk about with the marching band, right? The reason why Martin just gets up and walks with the marching band is they're supposed to have a whole scene where I think it's him and Kuda are talking on the porch, but there was a parade going on that they didn't know about that was drowning out the audio. So then the entire film crew is like, well, let's just shoot Martin walking through this parade. And then they threw that in the film. I think Romero he's a guerrilla filmmaker where he doesn't have a shot plan. He doesn't have a storyboard. He's just like, we're going to do this. And it comes out in his film. There's a roughness to it that just isn't salvageable by what he's doing.
Right.
So I got to put it at a 3.
Fair enough.
It's worth checking out for parts, but it's not up there. I gave The Omen less than 5. I can't give this.
No.
for my scale.
I know, but 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, no.
That's way too high.
Yeah.
And 7 on IMDb, that's way too high. I think it's watchable. Mm-hmm. Like some of the other movies we reviewed here are not.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't think it's that high. But I'm going to stay at a 50. I'm going to give it a 50% just because, I think there are moments in there that shine.
Okay.
But definitely not a diamond in the rough. And if you miss it, nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think we've said it before, but I think Romero's just a director where you're told you should like him, so you do.
I think so, yeah.
So I think that 90% is you're told it's good, so you have to say it's good.
Right. So we've done 2 Romero films. We have one more to do that I know of.
Yeah.
and we'll see how that one plays out. But so far, in my opinion, Rotten Tomatoes has missed the mark on the ratings of Romero films. And I was telling Mike just the other day, you know what? I just don't think I like him as a filmmaker. And I'm sorry, prove me wrong if you can. But the films that I've watched, I haven't thoroughly enjoyed. And I actually like Zack Snyder's version of Dawn of the Dead more than Romero's because it's more intense, it's got better shots, it's more fun, it's more engaging, it's not as racist. There's a whole bunch there. So I would say, yeah, Romero's not my favorite filmmaker.
No. And on that, we're going to end our discussion of Martin. Thank you very much for listening to us. Be sure to check out our social media page. On Instagram, we are at ScreamStreamPod. Stop by our website, www.screamsandstreams.com, where we have information about our episodes, descriptions of our categories, links to our research, our watchability scale, and our suggestion page where you can recommend movies that you think we should talk about. And please subscribe to, rate, and comment on our shows on any of the platforms where you get your podcasts. Until next time, this has been Mike and
Chad.
Scare you later.